Okay, the next item of business is a debate on motion 20646 in the name of Jenny Minto on non-surgical procedures and functions of medical reviewers. Scotland Bill at stage 1. I do invite members wishing to participate in the debate to press the request to speak buttons. Call on Jenny Minto to speak to and move the motion. Minister, around 7 minutes, please.
Non-surgical procedures have become increasingly popular, but regulation has not kept pace with this growing industry. Many people who undergo these procedures are happy with the results, and there are many responsible practitioners operating in both the medical and beauty parts of the sector. Many people value these procedures. This bill is not about restricting access or judging anyone who receives them. However, I have heard a number of powerful accounts of these procedures going wrong, including the tragic death in England of a young mother. I'm grateful to those who have brought these stories to my attention, including many MSPs in the Chamber who have been campaigning on this issue. I present this bill as Minister for Public Health. However, as Minister for Women's Health, I'm also very conscious that these stories of harm have predominantly affected women. We must act to minimise the risks of future harms to anyone receiving these procedures. I very much welcome the committee's very constructive and thoughtful report and have given a lot of consideration to their proposals. I am grateful to the members from across the Chamber who have engaged with me for some time and who have arranged roundtables to ensure a wide range of voices have been heard. I'll just finish this paragraph. I am committed to maintaining consensus and would like members with proposals for improving this bill to raise these with me.
Alice Cole-Hamilton.
Very grateful for the Minister giving way, and I too read the committee's report with some interest. She's right that those who avail themselves of these services are largely female, but so too this sector is largely female-led and dominated by self-employed practitioners. Does she recognise the concerns in the committee's report that if we get the balance wrong here, there is a risk that skilled and experienced practitioners could be regulated out of their profession altogether?
Minister,
I thank Mr Cole-Hamilton for his intervention. I will touch on that later in my contribution this afternoon. As well as the meetings with members, I've also heard directly from a wide range of interested groups, meeting with practitioners from both the clinical and non-clinical parts of the sector. Events were hosted during the consultation period for non-healthcare practitioners and businesses, and we've also met with groups representing doctors, nurses and other professionals. We received over 2,000 responses to our consultation and almost 600 responses to a survey directed at businesses. We have also met with regulators and professional bodies. This bill will make procedures safer for everyone. It ensures procedures take place in appropriate, hygienic settings where healthcare professionals are involved in the provision or management of services and who can assist if there are complications. And it makes it an offence to provide procedures to a person who is under 18. An order has also been introduced which establishes a local authority licensing scheme for lower risk procedures. While I think we should protect the rights of adults to access non-surgical procedures safely, I am confident I speak for a large majority in saying these procedures are not suitable for people under 18. It was reassuring to see these provisions strongly backed by the Health, Social Care and Sport Committee. These provisions also address the gap between Scotland and England, where Botox and fillers are already banned for under 18s, although this bill actually goes further by covering a wider range of procedures to enhance this protection. Covering what Mr Cole-Hamilton just raised, while there is compelling support for the action we are proposing, I also fully recognise, as with all public health actions, the need to minimise the impact on legitimate and well-intentioned practitioners. We have listened carefully to all of those who have offered views on the bill, and I must reflect some of the concerns currently non-regulated, non-clinically led parts of the sector. I have been impressed by the skill and expertise of many practitioners and business owners, the vast majority run by women. Many are clearly committed to being well trained in their work and operating with careful regard to safety. I have no interest in putting unnecessary burdens on these businesses. I only do so where I think it is necessary to achieve the wider public safety aims I am seeking to achieve. However, I know these proposals will be a challenge for some businesses. There is scope for guidance and support for businesses looking to transition to the new regulatory regime, and some businesses may be able to offer licensable procedures instead. I have committed to giving businesses time to make these changes they need to make.
Maurice Golden.
I thank the Minister for giving way. Does the member accept that the reality is that the bill as drafted will put 1,800 female-led businesses to the wall?
Minister, give the time back.
I thank Mr Golden for his intervention. I don't recognise these numbers, and I have been clear that I will work with businesses and the member himself to see where we can look at what is possible. However, I know there are many who think our approach is lacking in a different respect and who have said that the bill should be far more restrictive. This really indicates the balance I have sought to strike throughout, addressing the very grave concerns many have about managing and minimising the risk of these procedures, but at the same time minimising the effects on businesses. I commend this bill as the right way forward for an issue which clearly requires action. Presiding Officer, I'm also pleased to speak to Part 2 of the bill, which includes amendments to the Certification of Death Scotland Act 2011. These amendments extend the right to request an interested person review and update the provisions on authorising cremations in Scotland when a death has occurred elsewhere in the UK. I thank the committee for supporting these changes and note its recognition of the benefits these measures will bring. Extending access to interested person reviews is an important step in strengthening public confidence, ensuring that all relatives have the same opportunity to request a review where that would provide clarity or reassurance. We are also removing the requirement for medical reviewers to authorise cremations when the death took place in another part of the UK. Other UK nations already operate robust and reliable death certification systems, and recognising these processes avoids duplication, reduces delays for families and maintains appropriate safeguards. I would like to close by thanking again the committee for the work on their report and all those who gave evidence at stage 1. I look forward to hearing members' views and encourage everyone to support the progress of this bill. I move that the Parliament agrees to the general principles of the Non-Surgical Procedures and Functions of Medical Reviewers Scotland Bill.
Thank you, Minister. I now call on Claire Hockey on behalf of the Health, Social Care and Sport Committee. Around 6 minutes. Ms Hockey.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. And as convener, I am pleased to open today's Stage 1 debate on the Non-Surgical Procedures and Functions of Medical Reviewers Scotland Bill on behalf of the Health, Social Care and Sport Committee. I would like to start by thanking all those who contributed to the committee's Stage 1 scrutiny of the bill by providing written or oral evidence, and also to place on record my thanks to the committee clerks for their work at Stage 1. During its scrutiny, the committee heard extensive evidence that non-surgical procedures, many provided for cosmetic purposes such as Botox, fillers, strong chemical peels and some micro-needling, can carry significant risks if not carried out in appropriate settings and by suitably trained practitioners. Our committee has concluded that patient safety has to be the overriding priority when considering regulation in this area. We have heard evidence of great variance in standards adhered to by practitioners carrying out non-surgical procedures. Robust regulation is therefore necessary to ensure that those who want to access these procedures can do so in a safe and properly informed manner. We fully support the provisions in the bill which will make it illegal to carry out these procedures on people under the age of 18. This is a welcome step towards protecting young people who can be particularly vulnerable to influences about beauty standards from social media. The committee supports the Scottish Government's two-tiered approach to regulation. Through this bill, higher-risk procedures will only be allowed to take place in permitted premises, including in Healthcare Improvement Scotland registered clinics and under the supervision of authorised medical practitioners. Meanwhile, lower-risk procedures will be regulated through secondary legislation under the Civic Government Scotland Act 1982, which the committee has also recently scrutinised. At the same time, the committee's report has concluded that the bill currently lacks important detail about the specifics of clinical supervision and training requirements for those who will be allowed to undertake and supervise procedures. The committee acknowledges the impact that the United Kingdom Internal Market Act has had on the Scottish Government's ability to legislate in this area. Nonetheless, we urge the Scottish Government to work with the UK Government to ensure all those carrying out procedures are suitably qualified to do so. Our inquiry identified a number of other areas where the Scottish Government will need to work with the UK Government to resolve certain related issues. These include improved classification and regulation of certain devices and substances used in non-surgical procedures, action to regulate irresponsible advertising of non-surgical procedures, and addressing the potential risk that regulation of this sector may result in an increase in cosmetic tourism. During the scrutiny process, we heard concerns from many independent aesthetic practitioners that their businesses would be negatively impacted by the proposed approach to regulation of non-surgical procedures set out in the bill. To alleviate these concerns, our report calls for appropriate guidance and support to be provided to help responsible practitioners make a successful transition to the new regulatory framework. We also support a staged approach to enforcement that will give responsible practitioners suitable time and resource to adjust to the new regime. As part of its scrutiny, the committee took evidence from Healthcare Improvement Scotland, which will have new powers of enforcement under the bill. And we heard concerns about the extent to which HIS will have sufficient resources, capacity and training from the outset to be able to carry out its enforcement role effectively. To address these concerns, we have called on the Scottish Government to publish an implementation route map to ensure suitable processes, systems and resources are put in place by the date the regulations will come into force. Evidence submitted to the committee further highlighted that the penalties for offences created by the bill may not be sufficient to deter those bad actors willing to provide non-surgical procedures illegally. We are therefore calling for stronger penalties for offences committed under the terms of the bill. The bill will also provide an opportunity to improve data gathering about non-surgical procedures, in particular concerning the rate of procedures that are successfully carried out versus those that involve a complication or adverse reaction. More systematic data gathering would also allow the bill's implementation to be monitored and evaluated over time to determine its impact on patient safety. Our scrutiny suggests there is currently not a good level of awareness amongst the general public about the potential risks associated with these procedures or how to make a properly informed choice when accessing them. Our report therefore calls for a public awareness campaign as part of the implementation of the bill to ensure people have the confidence and knowledge to make informed choices should they wish to undergo a procedure. Part 2 of the bill is entirely unrelated to Part 1 and concerns processes for certification of death and authorisation of cremation. The committee is supportive of the proposed changes to these processes set out in the bill, and our view is that these will improve the process by which medical certificates of cause of death are reviewed in Scotland, making them fairer and more efficient. In conclusion, subject to the recommendations for improvement I've outlined, the committee is strongly supportive of the provisions of the bill and has recommended that the general principles of the bill be agreed to. I look forward to hearing contributions to this afternoon's debate and to considering this bill further should the Parliament vote to approve its general principles.
Thank you. I now call Standish Gulhani up to 5 minutes. Dr Gulhani.
Thank you. And a declaration of interest as a practising NHS GP. At the heart of this legislation is one simple issue: patient safety. At present, that safety is far too inconsistent, and in some parts of the non-surgical cosmetic sector, it's actually worryingly fragile. And let's be clear about the procedures we're discussing. They're not ordinary beauty treatments. They involve needles, injections, prescription-only medicines such as botulinum toxin, and substances placed under the skin. And when things go wrong, the consequences are not minor inconveniences. They can mean permanent scarring, tissue damage, psychological trauma, or even emergency hospital treatment. Many practitioners operate responsibly, maintain clean premises, follow proper consent procedures, and know how to recognise and, most importantly, manage complications. Those professionals deserve recognition, and many of them actively support wanting to have stronger regulations because they want a level playing field. They do not want to be undercut by individuals who complete a brief training programme and immediately begin carrying out invasive procedures without the same standards or safeguards. In one case, a practitioner that I've heard of failed to recognise a patient experiencing a severe allergic reaction following dissolution treatment, requiring urgent intervention and emergency hospital treatment. In another instance, a client received the wrong injectable product under the eyes, causing severe swelling and medical referral, yet struggled to obtain follow-up care or even basic accountability from the practitioner involved. There are also examples where proper consent procedures were clearly not followed. One patient, uncertain about proceeding with a treatment of Botox, was encouraged to just undergo the injections immediately so that there'd be no time to think about it before being given an additional procedure that should never have followed the injection. The result was significant facial complications just weeks before her wedding. These situations are not hypothetical risks. They are real, and they are experienced by real people in Scotland today. We have also seen cases where complications such as vascular occlusion following lip filler treatments left patients with lasting disfigurement. In several of these situations, complaints were reported, but little or no effective action followed, leaving patients uncertain where to turn to and responsible practitioners frustrated by the absence of consistent enforcement. We would never allow someone in a hospital to carry out minor surgical procedures in an environment that lacked proper infection control, medicine storage, documentation or emergency preparedness. Yet at present, those same minor surgical practitioners are occurring in placings and settings that would not meet even basic clinical standards. The bill is about drawing a line. Proper training, proper consent, safe storage of medicines, clinical hygiene, clear mechanisms for accountability when things go wrong. And some concerns have been raised about the potential impact on small businesses. And this is an important consideration, and consultation with the sector must continue to ensure that regulation is proportionate and workable. However, patient safety cannot depend upon the size of the business or the setting in which treatment takes place. A procedure performed in a small or home-based practice must meet the same hygiene and safety standards as professional standards in large facilities like a hospital. Responsible businesses understand that, and many welcome this regulation because it protects both their reputation but also their clients. It's clear some people are buying injectables from less than reputable places, resulting in questions over the quality and safety of those medications. When unregulated or poorly regulated procedures lead to complications, the cost, financial and clinical, does not disappear. It's simply transferred to the NHS, to corrective medical services, and most importantly, to the patients themselves who will live with the consequences. Preventing harm in the first place is not only the safer, it is a far more efficient and more responsible thing to do. So this bill should not be about restricting a sector. It should be about modernising oversight so that regulation matches the reality of current practice. Non-surgical cosmetic procedures have expanded rapidly in recent years, and we have simply not kept up. By establishing clearer standards, stronger oversight and appropriate safeguards, we can protect patients, support practitioners and ensure that when people do choose to undergo these procedures, they can do so with confidence and in the full knowledge that safety comes first. And it is for those reasons I'm pleased to support the general principles of the bill.
Thank you, Dr Gulhani. I now call on Carol Mochan, around 4 minutes. Ms Mochan.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I am pleased to confirm that Scottish Labour will be supporting the bill at stage 1. During the committee's evidence-gathering sessions, it was clear that the bill has the potential not only to address gaps in a largely unregulated sector, but also greatly improve patient safety, as has been said. The growth in the non-surgical cosmetic procedures industry has highlighted a worrying gap in essential regulation to protect people. For too long, the industry has operated without proper safety, accountability and professional standards in place, which has allowed many to take advantage of some of our consumers. And to be clear, we know many practitioners seek to keep the sector professional and practice at a high standard. So it is about the fact that we do need to get some of that proper accountability and regulation. So the regulation must, sort of unaccounted regulation must come to an end, and introducing greater restrictions is a necessary step to improve patient safety, which, as we have all said, is really the top priority. Scottish Labour, as I've said, recognise that the bill is not perfect and that a number of concerns around supporting the move to this new era of regulation, safety and standards must be addressed at stage 2, and I know the Minister has committed to doing that. We want to see fair and appropriate regulation to ensure the highest standards in patient safety whilst also supporting providers who are delivering a professional and safe standard. A key concern raised during the committee's evidence gathering was inconsistencies in the training and qualifications of people providing non-surgical procedures, and there was a consensus on the need for robust training and national standards to be put in place to ensure clarity and consistency. And I do hope that the Minister will be able to give some feedback on that in our closing remarks. The committee made clear that establishing clear and appropriate standards will be critical to the bill's implementation. So, as I say, it would be good to hear from the Minister on that tonight. Additionally, serious concerns was raised about whether sanctions for committing offences under the bill went far enough, and whether they act as strong enough deterrent for bad actors who are willing to repeat offences. And again, I welcome the fact that the Government recognises this concern and is considering what more can be done to address this space as well. Equally important for compliance is whether providers are given enough support to help ensure they follow the law, but the Government has been unable to provide any detail on what this guidance would look like, and they can't confirm whether businesses would receive financial support with help with some of the transitions. So we would hope to cover some of that at stage 2, and I would welcome any comments this evening that we might be able to work together on that. As well as providing guidance for providers, the bill presents a really welcome opportunity, of course, Dr Gohani.
Thanks, Gohani.
I was just wondering if the member would agree with me that we also have to strengthen his and make sure that they have the capacity to be able to carry out the functions.
Callum Mochan, I'll give you the time back.
Thank you. Yeah, that was a very helpful intervention. We did hear that, and if we want to really tackle this, then we do have to make sure that they get the appropriate funding and support for that. I just want to move on to another part that we discussed and is a great opportunity, is to educate the public on the standards and qualifications they should be looking for when seeking any of these procedures. We heard that many may not understand the associated risk of the procedures, know which procedures are regulated and how they can actually have a verified practitioner, a qualified practitioner or a qualifying or verified premises. One of the witnesses to the committee argued that the public awareness is extremely important and one of the fundamentals for making the bill work effectively. And so I ask that the Government do take this very seriously and appropriately resource this to ensure that we can support that increasing awareness of the public. Scottish Labour, as I've said, are supporting the bill, and I will close my remarks there because I know I'm over time, and we really look forward to working together to get this bill right at stage 2.
Thank you, Ms Mochan. And I call Gillian Mackay. Again, around 4 minutes, Ms Mackay.
Thanks, Presiding Officer. I want to use my opening contribution to spend some time reflecting on why we need this bill in the first place. In March 2024, healthcare professionals warned that Scotland had become the worst country in Europe for unqualified practitioners injecting customers with cosmetic treatments. The British Association of Plastic, Reconstructive and Aesthetic Surgeons, which isn't easy to say at this time on a Thursday, said in its evidence to the committee that the impact on the NHS and public resources is significant. Our members are witnessing an alarming increase in severe complications from procedures performed by unqualified practitioners, many requiring emergency NHS care or even resulting in loss of life. The Royal College of Nursing has highlighted that none of the procedures listed in this bill are without risk, and there is a lack of any reliable data on the cost to the NHS of complications arising out of these procedures. We do need to improve the data to better understand the full cost, but the evidence from clinicians is clear. A survey conducted by the Medical and Dental Defence Union of Scotland in October 2024 revealed that for respondents working in a medical field in Scotland, 35% had treated patients who had needed care following complications from unregulated cosmetic procedures, and 86% thought the number of patients each year seeking care following complications in unregulated cosmetic treatments had increased. And the ban on procedures for under 18s is particularly important. According to the Royal College of Surgeons, facial structures continue to develop into early adulthood, and starting these procedures from a young age can have long-term effects. Procedures such as dermal fillers and Botox too young can lead to muscle atrophy and tissue damage and should rightly only be available to those over the age of 18. We need to protect young people from the damaging long-term effects of cosmetic surgery, but it's also vital, as we've heard from others, that we protect those over 18 from side effects. The Royal College of Surgeons lists the serious complications associated with some cosmetic procedures, as including infections, blocked arteries, necrosis, blindness and stroke. They're clear that the introduction of this bill will reduce the likelihood and severity of any risks and complications. However, I believe that this bill should be strengthened in this regard and that duties should be placed on practitioners to inform customers about the risks attached to procedures. And I look forward to working with the Minister on this. The committee heard that the bill could have an impact on equality as it will affect a female-dominated industry and may lead to reduced access to cosmetic procedures in remote and rural areas. But I think the lack of regulation in the industry has led to unsafe practices which disproportionately affect vulnerable groups. But we do need to make sure that those who are safely and ethically carrying out these procedures have the ability to adapt to whatever regulation may come in. There will always be cosmetic tourism, rogue operators and poor standards, but we cannot let that stand in the way of improving patient safety in Scotland. Those unsafe practices will occur with or without regulation, so we should make sure that the vast majority of procedures are done in a safe, hygienic way in a properly controlled environment. Having said this, I think we should still monitor the equality impact of this bill. Like all good legislation, while I strongly believe the bill will improve public safety for marginalised groups, there could be unintended consequences. In their submission to the committee, the Cleft Lip and Palate Association warned that if access to cosmetic procedures becomes more bureaucratic or costly, this could act as a barrier for those who seek aesthetic enhancement to address cleft-related lip asymmetry, scarring or functional issues. And it's therefore important that the bill allows recognised healthcare professionals working in the cleft pathway to continue to offer safe lip fillers or adjunctive therapies under appropriate clinical governance. Overall, however, the bill will improve safety for people undergoing non-surgical cosmetic procedures and protect young people under the age of 18. And I believe the evidence for regulation is clear.
Thank you, Ms Mackay. And I call Alex Cole-Hamilton. Again, around 4 minutes, Mr Cole-Hamilton.
Thank you very much indeed, Presiding Officer. Presiding Officer, this has been a very interesting debate so far, and one where I am learning a lot. The legislation before us today brings together two distinct sets of reforms which aim to protect the public while strengthening confidence in our health and the regulatory systems around these kind of procedures. Part 1 of the bill addresses the regulation of higher-risk non-surgical cosmetic procedures. These are procedures that pierce or penetrate the skin, products such as dermafillers, botulinum toxin, thread lifts and deep chemical peels. These products are often marketed as routine or low risk, yet when they are carried out incorrectly or by those without adequate training, as we have heard several times today, the harm can be very serious, permanent and deeply distressing. At present, regulation in this area is fragmented. It's unclear. There's no single framework for setting out where these procedures may take place, who is qualified to perform them, or what minimum standards they must meet. That lack of clarity benefits no one, neither patients nor responsible practitioners. For those reasons, the Scottish Liberal Democrats agree that regulation is needed, and we will offer our cautious support for the bill at stage one. And I say cautious because we do attach caveats to that, which I will lay out. The bill's attempt to introduce a risk-based proportionate framework, including the proposed two-tier system that distinguishes between those higher-risk and lower-risk procedures, is sensible. Restricting higher-risk procedures to permitted premises with appropriate medical oversight is sensible in principle. While the prohibition on carrying out these procedures on under-18s is long overdue, and the inspection and enforcement powers given to Healthcare Improvement Scotland will be essential if this system is to work in practice at all. However, Presiding Officer, we must pay attention to the potential unintended consequences here. I raised it in my intervention with the Minister, as did Maurice Golden, because we have heard consistent evidence that unless implementation is handled carefully, or amendment not made to this bill, there is a risk of harm to the well-trained, responsible practitioners who are currently providing these services safely and professionally. the Health and Social Care and Sport Committee highlighted inconsistencies in training and qualifications across the sector. We agree with the committee's call for clear national standards and a better definition of the competencies linked to levels of risk. That clarity matters, not just for future entrants to the profession, it matters for those who are already practising, many of whom have invested heavily in training under the current system. The Federation of Small Businesses has also raised important concerns. Its members support regulation as a means of flushing out bad actors and improving public safety, but they warn that as drafted, the bill risks harming trained practitioners who are currently operating safely. The Scottish Liberal Democrats agree with them. A constituent of mine who falls into this category recently got in touch, visited me to explain that as drafted, the bill risks putting her out of business due to its requirement to have a medical professional be on site every time she is working, whether that's in her home or in somebody else's home. This is a sector that is largely female-led and dominated by self-employed practitioners. If we get the balance wrong here, I will take an intervention from Sandesh Gulhani.
Thank you for taking the intervention. I do wonder whether the appropriateness of performing procedures in your own home, in an environment that is not clinical and not potentially clean, is something that we really should be encouraging.
Let's go on Hamilton and give you the time back.
I'm absolutely certain that regulation needs to be tightened up around here. But I think that's not really the salience of my point. The point is, if we get the balance wrong here, there's a risk that skilled and experienced practitioners could be regulated out of their profession altogether. And that's the fundamental. That would not improve safety. It would remove livelihoods and tempt people to operate underground and remove themselves from the regulatory framework altogether. I think that's a risk that both Sandesh Gulhani and I would share in terms of our concern. There is also a lack of clarity about how new and innovative procedures will be categorised in the future. We are living in a time of new developments in this area. This is an industry that evolves very quickly, and so those currently working in it should be involved in shaping how new treatments are assessed and are regulated. To conclude, Presiding Officer, this bill addresses real gaps in regulation. It absolutely does, and responds to legitimate public concern. Public concern the Scottish Liberal Democrats absolutely share. So we will support it at stage 1, because regulation is needed, but it is also clear it must be refined at stage 2 to ensure that it protects patients, stops the idea of people going underground to perform these procedures, and make sure that we're not punishing responsible practitioners. Thank you.
Thank you. We now move to the open debate. I call Stuart McMillan to be followed by Maurice Golden, around 4 minutes.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. First of all, I want to thank the Minister for introducing this bill, but also listen to the concerns of people within the non-surgical cosmetic industry. I'm sure the roundtable hosted by Mellis Briggs MSP a few months ago, and what she heard that day will have been very persuasive. I also want to thank colleagues in the Health, Social Care and Sport Committee for their thorough investigation of the bill. I thought the Stage 1 report was excellent. Equally, I want to thank my colleagues in the Delegated Powers and Law Reform Committee for the scrutiny that we gave the bill and how it also helped shape the further consideration of the lead committee. But finally, and most importantly, I want to thank Jill Best, my constituent who first brought this issue to my attention in 2018. I know that Jill is in the gallery this afternoon. Jill's unstinting efforts to make the sector safer is something that really struck a chord with me. Moving on to the bill, there are several aspects I believe that we can all agree on, which are that safety is absolutely paramount for patients, increasing the minimum age to 18, but also ensuring the legislation can be amended through secondary legislation as new procedures are developed. And I think that actually deals with the point that Alec Cole-Hamilton just raised a moment ago. But aspects of the bill that are more contentious primarily relate to the regulatory function. Firstly, I agree that Healthcare Improvement Scotland should act as the regulator. And clearly, due to the lack of data available in the sector, it's difficult to get a clear picture of how many people and businesses are actually involved, hence why regulation is so important. I therefore note the Minister's reply in relation to sections 162 and 163 of the Stage 1 report, but ask her not to rule out additional funding for HIS if this is required to get the regulatory function in place before the sector becomes self-financing. Sections 108 to 125 relate to training qualifications within the sector, which, well, I know this bill doesn't really focus on, is a key consideration when thinking about what the industry will look like going forward. And I do, however, welcome the dialogue on this issue has actually begun, including with the UK Government due to Yakima, as per the Minister's reply to the report. Now, the Minister will recall that this was an area that my committee quizzed her on, and having this engagement now is vital to finding the most suitable and also workable solution to safeguarding patients, but also businesses and providers who do have that Level 7 training. Now, Section 124 of the report specifically, and the Minister's reply regarding the Healthcare Improvement Scotland Regulations 2011 are helpful and also complement each other in that regard. Now, the need to consider that these issues can be best explained by highlighting the viewpoint of a nurse at David Russell MSP's round table last week, who was a client of a Level 7 practitioner. And she said that she'd prefer to be treated by a Level 7 practitioner who undertakes procedures daily, in contrast to the same treatment from a registered nurse who may only do a couple of procedures per week to supplement their income. Therefore, ultimately, whatever Stage 2 and Stage 3 amendments are successful, that aspect of training, but pathways to upskilling, is absolutely vital when it comes to secondary legislation prior to the implementation in September 2027. And a further point I want to highlight, it doesn't concern my constituency, but it could affect the rural island communities, and that of the point of the clinical supervision which has been touched upon. The Stage 1 evidence highlights a range of views here, but whilst I wholeheartedly agree with the evidence outlined in Sections 101 and 102, that clinical supervision should be on site due to the risk of potential adverse reactions, as Dr Gilhani spoke about. I'm conscious that compliance could be a challenge for remote areas and island areas if there are not many people trained in such supervision. So I think the FSB Scotland briefing is also helpful for the debate today. But finally, I believe that the enforcement penalties should be strengthened. Clear guidance helps reduce the potential for people to claim they made an inadvertent mistake. Patients are trusting their bodies to practitioners, so they need to have a safeguard regarding enforcement. In closing, Presiding Officer, I hope that colleagues do vote to pass this bill at Stage 1 today. And the industry is here to stay, and regulation is long overdue to make the sector safer for patients, as I indicated in my members' debate on this very issue in October 2024. If we can make it safer, we're doing the right thing for our communities, but also for our constituents. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Macmillan. And I call Maurice Golden to be followed by Colin Beattie, around 4 minutes. Mr Golden.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. And let me start on a point of consensus. I think from what I've heard, there will be a unanimous support for the bill at Stage 1. And I'd like to thank the Minister for her engagement thus far. And furthermore, I think everyone in the Chamber recognises that the status quo is unacceptable and there is a requirement for regulation. And this regulation, if enforced and adequately resourced as well as promoted to the public, will help to limit the black market and thereby improve safety standards across the sector. Now, obviously, safety standards are high among professional and experienced practitioners, and my view is there's two groups operating in Scotland: legitimate practitioners, which includes healthcare professionals and non-healthcare professionals, and secondly, the black market bad actors, as we've heard. However, from reading the bill, it looks like there's two groups being identified, and the first is legitimate, which is only healthcare professionals, even if they have little training in aesthetics, and secondly, a black market, which encapsulates all non-healthcare professionals, which, bizarrely, includes the best practitioners in the field. So, my view is the bill, as drafted, will actually assist in lowering safety and standards and ultimately reduce enforcement and accountability. Under the bill, only healthcare professionals will be able to register premises with Healthcare Improvement Scotland. This means highly trained, insured and experienced non-healthcare professionals will be legally barred from operating, regardless of their competence or safety record. It is regulatory overreach and it will exclude safe practitioners instead of stopping unsafe ones, which is what we're attempting to do. Happy to give way.
Claire Hawkey.
Taking my intervention. I think he may have misinterpreted what the bill is proposing and some of the committee's report, because we're talking about the premises, the HIS inspected premises for the higher tariff non-surgical procedures being medically or healthcare professionals supervised, not that necessarily that those healthcare professionals would carry out the actual procedures. And this is about ensuring safety if there is an adverse effect, that there is some sort of medical assistance easily accessible.
Maurice Golden, I'll give you the time back.
I don't believe there's a requirement to have a healthcare professional on site. In fact, I see that as, and I'll come on to this, as not being particularly helpful in terms of safety or of client experience, and shows a lack of understanding at the point in which complications might arise, which is often once they have left the clinic, and therefore unless the proposal is for the healthcare professional to follow that client throughout their week, then the argument actually falls down completely. Now, do I have time?
I can certainly give you the time back, Mr.
Yeah,
Golden.
happy to.
Claire Hockey.
Again, I think, and perhaps the Minister on an intervention would be able to clarify this more fully, but I think the member is actually misinterpreting the bill and consequently the recommendations of the Stage 1 report.
Maurice Golden.
My understanding, for example, on permitted premises, it should be the environment that we are focusing on, e.g. a clean clinic in or as part of a dwelling would be a safer environment than a dirty room in a doctor's surgery. And I think the focus needs to be on the client experience and the regulated overall journey for the client. Now, ultimately, happy to.
Carol Mocher.
Yeah, I mean, I think having been part of taking the evidence, I think there was a strong emphasis in terms of this part of the bill around what protections are there, because there could be interactions and there could be reactions, and about having that medical person there for that purpose. There's also discussion obviously about the premises, but there was absolutely stuff about how do we protect the public if there was complications.
Maurice Golden, again, give you time back.
I mean, from my personal experience and those individuals, what I can say is that an aesthetics practitioner who's been regularly assisting clients for a decade would be safer in triaging than perhaps a nurse with 2 days of training in aesthetics. So I think there's a balance there. I think that both can sit alongside each other, but just because an individual has a medical degree doesn't ensure that their aesthetics training is going to be commensurate with what a client may expect or want. And I think I'll need to make some progress, yes. Ultimately, I think what we have to recognise is that the aesthetics sector is one of artists and creatives, and it takes years of training and practice to hone the techniques required to be top of the field. In addition, as has been mentioned previously, the sector is filled with female innovators, with leaders, with business owners from start-ups to scale-ups. And this is perhaps one of the best examples of a sector in Scotland that is fully leveraging the pool of talent we have. And therefore, we need to be very cautious at the implication of the bill, which is to say to up to 1,800 female entrepreneurs, you don't have a future, or they wouldn't have a future in Scotland. So I think there is overall a requirement for businesses to be managed and run by adequately trained individuals, that this should be regulated, and this would include healthcare professionals and non-healthcare professionals. Ultimately, having a prescriber in the room does not necessarily improve patient outcomes. And therefore, I believe what needs to happen at Stage 2 and Stage 3 is a proportionate, evidence-based regulatory framework that improves safety without excluding competent, properly trained and insured practitioners.
Thank you, Mr Golden. I now call Colin Beattie to be followed by Katie Clark. Around 4 minutes. Mr Beattie.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. Like many in this chamber, I've received correspondence from both medical aesthetic practitioners and non-medical aesthetic practitioners. One message between both groups is consistent: the need to ensure public safety. Now, I'll be obviously supporting the principles of the bill at stage 1, but with the expectation that amendments are made to ensure we reach the correct balance that ensures public safety. One botched procedure is one too many, and it can have life-altering effects, and we must eliminate cowboy practitioners who have inadequate or indeed no training. I've seen horrific photos of procedures that have gone wrong, which also result in additional work for our hard-pressed NHS staff. In that respect, it's disappointing to be told that we do not truly know the impact that botched procedures have on our NHS due to insufficient data collection, and that's an area that needs improved going forward. If the bill does proceed to stage 2, we must ensure that safe non-medical practitioners can transition and continue to practice. I hosted a roundtable late last year with a number of non-medical practitioners who told me of their concerns. Some have paid upwards of £30,000 towards training and even more to ensure their salon is up to standard. With the lack of a training framework in this bill, they face an uncertain future. On the face of it, you would assume that everyone with a medical qualification would be more capable of providing these procedures than someone without. However, some of the practitioners I've met have undertaken extensive training in aesthetic anatomy. Meanwhile, someone with a medical qualification unrelated to aesthetics could complete a shorter course and be legally allowed to perform these procedures without that same specialised skill and experience. That is not to say that either non-medics or those with medical qualifications are more qualified, but simply that we need a smart approach as to who can perform these procedures. As I understand it, the Scottish Government cannot implement training standards without the consent of the UK Government due to the Internal Market Act, and I note that the Minister has written to her UK Government equivalent to determine how both governments can collaborate. Non-medics must be able to transition with government-approved training, and I would urge the UK Government to work constructively with the Scottish Government on this point. The committee makes plain that there is still vital work to be done to ensure this bill works, and I agree it lacks certain important, clear definitions. How many supervising clinicians must be on site? What exactly does supervision mean? Points like these need tightened up to avoid exploitation. If this bill does not work as hoped, I fear for the unintended consequences for the industry. Mass closure of businesses and an increase in running costs and thus customer prices may drive practitioners underground and create an unwelcome black market. The risks to the public obviously will be greatly increased. And I believe that in order for this bill to achieve its aims and improve public safety, it must include the implementation of a regulatory body. The committee has raised concerns around the ability of Health Improvement Scotland to enforce the bill, and I would urge the Government to take note of these concerns. It is vital we take the entire industry with us if the bill passes stage 1. We have an opportunity to make this industry safer and better regulated, and we must grasp that opportunity with sensitivity and understanding.
Thank you, Mr Beattie. We now come to the final speaker in the open debate, Katie Clark. Around 4 minutes.
I'm pleased to speak in this debate and that the Minister has brought forward legislative proposals this session. There's been a massive expansion of the non-surgical procedures industry against a backdrop of a lack of regulation, and we know that procedures that can carry the risk of serious complications ranging from burns and infections to stroke and, as the Minister said, even death, can be routinely offered currently by individuals with minimal training and sometimes a lack of infection control, consent or aftercare. And I've met with some of the survivors of these procedures who have suffered significant injury. So it's clear that the lack of regulation is leading to real harm, and clients deserve the knowledge that everything is being done to ensure a procedure is being carried out in the safest way. At the moment, many users of services are unaware of the risks involved in the procedures that they're getting and the lack of regulation. Over the last 2 years, Accident Direct Scotland has handled 430 cases relating to beauty and cosmetic procedures. Analysis of a random sample of 50 recent Accident Direct cases relating to non-surgical procedures found that 48% involved reports of physical harm or adverse effects, and that in most of these cases, consumers sought professional medical assistance and required treatment. The proliferation of procedures being provided and the increase in demand for these procedures is amplified largely on social media advertising and harms in particular young women. Charities have warned that Scotland standards for patient safety are falling behind the rest of the UK and other countries in Europe, a point made earlier in the debate. And the Medical and Dental Defence Union of Scotland have reported that 16% of surveyed medical practitioners had treated someone between the ages of 16 and 20 following complications from unregulated cosmetic procedures. Many of those young women probably would not be aware of the potential risks. We've heard reports in the media about children as young as 15 seeking help after experiencing medical issues from Botox and filler. Save Face, a UK government-approved register, has warned that year on year, nearly 90% of the people who report to them find their practitioner on social media, and those people are getting younger every year. The need for fair and proportionate regulations to ensure the highest standards in patient safety is clear. I therefore appreciate this bill's efforts to introduce a statutory framework to regulate high-risk, non-surgical cosmetic procedures. As I say, I was concerned that we might not get any legislation this session, so I am genuinely very grateful to the Scottish Government that we have this in front of us today, because we need regulation in place as soon as possible. So I welcome the recommendations sent out in the Stage 1 report. I believe that the Scottish Government must put in place appropriate support and guidance to help the transition to the new regulatory regime by clarifying requirements for clinical supervision. But I think this Parliament has to say very clearly today that we need regulation as soon as possible, and I'm therefore pleased to support the general principles of this bill.
Thank you, Ms Clark. We come to closing speeches. I note that Mr Cole-Hamilton is not in the chamber, having participated in the debate, which is disappointing. I will expect an explanation and apology, and I call Gillian Mackay around 4 minutes. Ms Mackay.
Thanks, Presiding Officer. I spoke in favour of regulating the medical aesthetics industry when Stuart McMillan held a members' business debate on it back in October 2024. And his contribution this afternoon reflected on how we support those who have made a genuine mistake and support them to improve. Given some of the bad press around these procedures and the potential for practitioners to be demonised for a genuine mistake, we need to make sure that regulation supports improvement across the sector and opportunities for learning are taken. And I hope that will be at the heart of the ethos of the regulation, rather than it just being a punitive measure. The committee heard during its evidence sessions that this bill will create a level playing field, as healthcare professionals already provide aesthetic procedures in his regulated clinics. If passed, the bill will ensure all providers have to meet the same standards. We know there are rogue operators and that there always will be, but we're simply ensuring that all those operating in this sector can be held to those same high standards. In committee, a representative from the industry argued that the cost of treatment has to be considered as well, and if this becomes a hugely costly exercise for business, the burden of cost will be passed on to the consumer. However, I think it's important that we shouldn't be looking to drive down business costs for the sake of patient safety. Healthcare professionals are subject to high fees. Yep, I'll take the intervention.
Stuart McMillan.
I thank the member for taking the intervention. I mean, that aspect about costs are really important in this whole debate, because as we understand the situation now, people who are also with the bill, people who are at the top tier, they are getting a lot of their medicine, a lot of the products they're using through the proper procedures. That's not always the case. So obviously they will then incur higher costs. So would say the member agree with me? I mean, the purpose of this bill is about actually trying to drive costs up and drive safety up as compared to a race to the bottom.
Gillian Mackay, give the time back.
Absolutely, I'd fully agree with the point that Stuart McMillan's made about driving up those standards. The heart of this bill is about patient safety and making sure that people are safe when they're entering into these procedures. Healthcare professionals are subject to high fees but also high standards, and we should expect the same for others carrying out procedures which carry the risk of complications ranging from burns and infections to scarring. The committee report does acknowledge business concerns and includes a recommendation that the Scottish Government provides appropriate support and guidance to help responsible providers of non-surgical procedures to make the transition successfully to the new regulatory framework. As Alex Cole-Hamilton and Maurice Golden have acknowledged, there are skilled and ethical practitioners which should be supported, and the Scottish Greens endorse this approach as it supports businesses to do the right thing while still prioritising patient safety. We do support a ban on procedures for people under the age of 18. However, I note the calls from the Royal College of Nursing who say there is merit in considering additional safeguards, such as requiring a GP review or healthcare professional to carry out all procedures on younger people, and this is worth considering if the bill proceeds to stage 2. The committee also heard during evidence sessions that the proposed fines within the bill could be absorbed as a business cost by so-called rogue operators, and it's essential that any sanctions within the bill act as a sufficient deterrent to those operating out with regulations. The committee report calls on the Scottish Government to set stronger penalties for offences committed under the terms of the bill, and we fully support this. Healthcare Improvement Scotland will have an extremely important role to play in regards to the bill, as it will be granted new inspection powers under enforcement to investigate unregistered settings suspected of breaching the law. The committee heard about the challenges this could pose for Healthcare Improvement Scotland with the added burden this will place on staff and resources. It's vital that they're properly resourced to carry out their functions, and the committee report calls on the Scottish Government to provide assurances that in the short term it's committed to putting the funding in place to make sure that HIS can properly enforce the bill from the outset. The committee report also calls on the Scottish Government to publish an implementation route map. We fully support that as well. If the bill is to be effective in improving patient safety and tackling rogue operators, it must have sufficient funding attached, and I look forward to hearing from the Scottish Government on how it plans to achieve this.
Thank you, Ms Mackay. And I call Paul Sweeney again. Around 4 minutes, please.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer, and it's certainly been an interesting debate, and I think the rationale for the bill is clear from the speeches we've heard today. I suppose as a point of historical interest, it feels to me like we've imperceptibly shifted to a point where we've gone back to the era of the barber surgeon without sufficient regulation. You know, it's important to note that the Royal College of Surgeons of Edinburgh was originally called the Edinburgh Guild of Barbers and Surgeons. We moved away from that kind of backstreet practice for good reason. And I think without recognising shifts in medical trends and clinical trends, we are in danger of slippage in patient safety and public safety, and that is why I think the legislation is welcome, because it is one of the basic rules of good governance that when society changes, the laws and regulations must be kept up to date to reflect them. And I think everyone here today recognises that the world of non-surgical cosmetic procedures has been transformed, that once the realm of celebrities and the super rich, something you'd watch on the Discovery Channel or something, now you see increasing, ubiquity across society. Discounted Botox, chemical peels and other non-surgical cosmetic procedures. It seems like every other week there is a story about an alcohol-fueled Botox party or a non-surgical cosmetic procedure gone wrong. I think we've heard some horror stories in speeches today. We even hear of hotel rooms and garden sheds, a committee being places where people would go for such procedures. That is certainly a worrying situation and one that is in desperate need of state regulation. So let's be clear, it's not for Parliament to determine a person's choice on how they wish to present themselves to the world, but it is absolutely imperative that any new and emerging industry has the necessary protections and regulations in place to ensure public safety. And we know that many providers keep to high standards, but also know, sadly, many do not, and that is the point of a regulatory floor. In the same way we require the high standards in the National Health Service and in our clinicians, even in private practice, in our factories and our service industries, safety of patients, consumers and staff must always be maintained at a high level, and that is why Labour supports the bill in principle. And let us not forget that, yes, happy to give way. Yeah.
Hockey.
you to Mr Sweeney for taking my intervention. I wouldn't necessarily disagree with anything that he said, but we do also agree that we absolutely need a public information programme so that people understand the risks of what might be seen as a simple procedure or something that's quite harmless.
Paul Sweeney, give the time back.
Absolutely agree with that, and I think that's something we want to further develop in the next stages of the bill. I think it's important to demonstrate best practice as well for people who might want to enter into that industry and develop their skills. We want to promote best practice and discourage unhelpful practice, and that cycle should drive innovation. We should not be an enemy of progress, we should just try to guide it in the public good. So I think that regulation should help the playing field be level between those who choose to cut corners on patient and staff safety to maximise profit and those who are already spending the money and investing in training, health and safety to develop a thriving business that is patient-centric and ethical in nature. And I think creating that level playing field is the key so that customers can be guaranteed and have confidence that they are getting good quality treatment and that practitioners are given the opportunity to grow through training opportunities to access the appropriate facilities that they know, not prohibitively expensive, but could be perhaps developed in a cooperative way. And that should be something we should look to drive as Scotland's reputation for safety and patient care is paramount. That doesn't mean we believe the bill is perfect. We share concerns about the necessary regulations must be accompanied with proper support and guidance for practitioners who will need to develop their practice to meet the new standards. We heard some concerns raised at committee. We don't want people to lose their livelihoods as a result of this. We want to guide them towards the standards that help them to reach their potential. The purpose of the bill should therefore not be to remove from the industry those who lack certain qualifications, but who will be willing to learn and improve their practice. And that should be an opportunity to improve the general common weal, not just reduce consumer choice. So I think we've heard across the Parliament today why non-cosmetic surgery needs to be brought under regulations. It's a new industry expanding rapidly, and so it's only right that while it's still relatively new, we intervene via legislation to create those necessary changes and improvements that let it thrive in a manner conducive to public and patient safety. It's not going to solve everything in this legislation. We know there's much happening in Scotland which is already illegal, and without proper enforcement, many surgical abuses will continue. And as it stands, there are very real concerns about how support will be given to the industry to meet these new standards. I think that's a real concern we need to look at more. But it is clear now the time for regulation is needed. So patients can be assured of their safety, that staff are safe and well trained, and that Scottish practitioners can lead the world by developing best practice. And for all these reasons, Labour is happy to support the bill today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Sweeney. And I call Sanders Kulhani again. Dr Kulhani, around 4 minutes, please.
Thank you. This bill is ultimately about patient safety, and right now that safety is far too variable. Let's be honest, the bill is not perfect, and we will seek amendments to improve it. Examples of this, as Paul Sweeney has just mentioned, the fines don't seem to be adequate. It will be seen as just being the cost of business, and people will just keep paying it. And the specifics of supervision, we're not sure quite what that means, as many other people have pointed out across the chamber, and that's something that certainly does need to get tightened up. We do all agree that we should have a ban on under 18s, and anyone that is under 18 that does require, for medical reasons, to undergo any form of procedure, well, that will be covered by NHS practitioners who will be doing it. Now, I think Maurice Golden is right when he said the status quo is not acceptable. And ultimately, I think we are all in the same place. But the debate, as Alex Cole-Hamilton and Maurice Golden are having at the moment, is where we draw that line for where the regulation sits. Now, Stuart McMillan spoke about Jill Best, who campaigned to improve safety and being up in the audience, and I would like to thank her for the work that she has put in. There are really worrying things happening in Scotland right now. Fizz and filler parties where people are drinking alcohol and being injected. I mean, I couldn't think of a worse way of going about doing medical procedures. We are seeing people having procedures done in garden sheds. We're seeing them being done in a bedroom. I was told that in Edinburgh hotel rooms, people were having butt lifts done. You know, the cleanliness and the safety is just unacceptable. It's not a place that we can be in. Yes.
Alex Cole-Hamilton.
want to interrupt the member while he's giving us such a vivid description of some of the practices taking place, but does he recognise that for as long as the medication and the implements and the skills exist, that this practice is going to happen, whether we like it or not? We need to regulate it, but if we over-regulate it, it risks driving it underground, out of the light, where we can't see it.
Sandra Gilhani, I'll give you the time back.
I think that's what I said at the very start about that's where the debate is resting, where the regulation sits and how you can regulate the industry, because the industry is here to stay. There's no question of banning this. So it's where the regulation is and how do we proportionately regulate while allowing people to continue legitimate businesses. But on the legitimate business, we took evidence, and there was a big business that came in, perfectly legitimate, was doing a lot of good. And one of the things they did was they were removing lesions from people's bodies, so skin lesions. So I asked how they knew it wasn't cancer. And that was not a response that filled me with confidence. In a hospital, if I were to remove a lesion, I would send that lesion off to histology to get looked at. If you have a dermatologist say that that lesion is not cancer, you can be pretty confident that isn't cancer because a dermatologist is an expert in that field. But there was no expert in the field to look at that lesion before it was taken out. It wasn't sent to histology. So how do we know we're not removing cancers without adequate training? I think Gillian Mackay made the point about costs going up. But I think the point that I would like to make to the Chamber is if it means that we have clean rooms where you're not likely to get an infection, if it means the person you see is going to have insurance, if it means the person that you see is regulated, if it means that we are getting legitimate medication, and if it means that records are being kept and data is being sent about complications, then surely that is vital. And if the costs go up a little bit, that has to be part of the business model that is going forwards. Carol Mockin was right when she said that we need to ensure that we strengthen and ensure that capacity is present in HIS. And again, Stuart McMillan was speaking about enough money going to HIS to ensure that it can perform the duties that it needs to do. Unintended consequences from Alex Hall-Hamilton and Maurice Golden, I think we have discussed here, and it is important that those are looked at safely. But ultimately, patient safety must come first. And for those reasons, I think it is absolutely vital we support the general principles here at Stage 1 and look to make amendments to improve the bill at Stage 2.
Thank you very much, Dr Gulhani. I now call on Jenny Minto to wind up the debate. Minister, I'd be grateful if you could take us up to just before 5 o'clock, please.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. And I would really like to thank colleagues hugely for the very constructive comments on Part 1 of the bill. I truly believe that this debate shows how this Parliament can work. I'm also grateful for the suggestions made by members. I would like to reiterate my request at the beginning of the debate for members who have suggestions for improvements that my door remains open to work collaboratively with them. This is a bill born from cross-chamber concerns, and it should benefit from cross-chamber input from all parties. So I would like to respond to a few of the points, but I would like to continue these discussions as we lead up to Stage 2, assuming we get support for the bill, the bill this afternoon. I am grateful for everyone raising the impact of businesses, and I hope it was clear from my earlier comments that I do not take these impacts lightly. I'm very happy to explore ways in which businesses can access to help to adapt their models before the bill comes into force. And I want to repeat what I said to the committee, that I currently propose to commence the offences in the bill in September 2027, giving a reasonable lead-up time for all concerned. Of course, I cannot support anything that would dilute the key safety measures of the bill and remain mindful of the support the bill has received so far and the feedback from others that we should go further. I want to be clear. This bill will make procedures safer for everyone. It ensures procedures take place in appropriate hygienic settings where healthcare professionals are involved in the provision or management of services and who can assist if there are complications. The bill followed a consultation carried out in 2020, which found that 98% of respondents supported the principle of further regulation of procedures, led by those who are not qualified healthcare professionals. A further public consultation undertaken in early 2025 showed broad support for action to make the sector safer and allowed us to refine our proposals, the result of which is included in today's legislation. And a number of people have made this point. The public think that non-surgical procedures are already regulated in some way, and I think the points that Katie Clark and also Claire Haughey and others have made about ensuring that we have that information out is incredibly important. Throughout the bill, we have worked with a range of stakeholders, including business owners, beauty industry representative, healthcare professionals, environmental health officers, which is really important, and professional regulators to develop and refine our process. And in response to some of the points that Maurice Golden made, there are some skilled non-medical practitioners trained in this space, but these skills to ensure the safety need to be complemented by the skills framed around healthcare professionals that they also bring to the subject. However, I have asked my officials to consider HIS regulation of independent clinics and ensure that the existing requirements are not disproportionate. And I think that moves very well on to training and supervision. And it was clear in the convener of the Health and Social Care and Sport Committee, and also Carol Mochan's contributions and many others, that the importance of training and also the requirements for supervision within a setting. I've set out in evidence to the committee why we were not able to put these provisions on the face of the bill. I'm absolutely committed to the principle that, as well as the provisions we've put on the face of the bill, we also need to put in standards for training and set expectations for the oversight and supervision of procedures. Training standards will be established following consultation both with those who have met them, so who have to meet them, with experts and training providers, and with the UK Government to consider taking a consistent approach. The Scottish Government has met many healthcare professionals and non-healthcare aesthetic practitioners, listened to their views, including training standards. We know there are existing training options for practitioners, which we will consider carefully. And as Colin Beattie has noted, I have written to my counterparts in the UK Government to secure formal agreement to cooperation on some of these matters. I also note the points made about implementing a route map and also the public information campaign, and are very content to review that further. Penalties have also been highlighted by many members in the debate, and following the committee report, I understand why people are looking at this. For the time being, I want to reassure members that this message has been very clearly received, and I will consider how we can go further here, and I would welcome any specific recommendations about an appropriate level of penalty. Stuart McMillan commented on rural businesses, and as an MSP for a rural constituency myself, I recognise very well the particular challenges for businesses in these areas. On the other hand, it is important that we have to balance to ensure that rural areas are as well protected as their urban counterparts. Last night or yesterday afternoon, I met with a group of practitioners from rural constituencies, and I will consider their concerns and suggestions, and again, very happy to discuss further with members of the Chamber. I also noted that Dr Gilhani made reference to the capacity of Healthcare Improvement Scotland to take on new areas of work. My view remains that HIS is the correct regulator for these procedures, building on their experience of regulating independent healthcare to date. I'm sure that HIS staff will also have taken note of some of the comments about capacity and current working practices, and I'm committed to working with HIS to ensure they can meet all our expectations, as Stuart McMillan noted. And if I may turn briefly to Colin Beattie's suggestion of a new professional body in this sector. I know that there are existing groups in this area, but I would certainly welcome greater levels of organisation and that would allow practitioners to speak with one voice. and help support safer standards. The Scottish Government would certainly be happy to work with such a body in the future. All of these issues raised this afternoon have been carefully considered, but I will of course examine comments made today and the recommendations made by the committee further. To reiterate, I am happy to work with members on potential amendments where these can strengthen the bill, and I look forward to doing so. I want to end my comments by returning to the committee report on the principle of Part 1 of the bill. Intervention to regulate a growing and changing sector is not easy, and I am committed to doing the work to make the right decisions in the coming weeks. I agree with the committee's view, and has been said in the Chamber this afternoon, that public safety must be the primary priority, and that will be my main consideration. I am aware that Part 2 of the bill has not received as much attention as Part 1 for understandable reasons. Nevertheless, I remain grateful for the interest in the important issue. The amendments in Part 2 of the bill reaffirm our commitment to ensuring clarity, transparency and public confidence in the death certification system. They strengthen the safeguards that support families and professionals and ensure our legislation reflects the robust checks already in place. In respect of both parts of the bill, I urge Parliament to support its general principles.
Thank you. Thank you. That concludes the debate on the Non-Surgical Procedures and Functions of Medical Reviewers Scotland Bill at Stage 1. We move on to the next item of business, which is consideration of Motion 20632 in the name of Shona Robertson on a financial resolution for the Restraint and Seclusion in Schools Scotland Bill, and I call on Jenny Gilruth, Cabinet Secretary, to move the motion.
Formally moved, Presiding Officer.
Thank you. The question on this motion will be put at decision time, and there are 3 questions to be put as a result of today's business. The first question is that motion 20606 in the name of Monica Lennon on the Ecocide Scotland Bill at Stage 1 be agreed. Are we all agreed? The Parliament is not agreed, therefore we'll move to a vote, and there will be a short suspension to allow members to access the digital voting system.